Hi, everyone, and Happy New Year. So, we are back again in the new year with a brand new episode. And there is someone who would want to wish you Happy New Year as well. Say hi to Smokey.
Hi, Smokey.
Okay, okay, okay. Or she protests. And today's episode is going to be a very special one because we have a special guest with us today, somebody who is a reader and an author as well. So now I'm going to ask Sumit to introduce our guest.
Okay, thank you. Gives me great pleasure to introduce Dr. Navjotpal Kaur. Navjot is not only a colleague and a close collaborator, my closest collaborator, she's also a sister. So welcome, Navjot, to Sisters, Sips and Stories.
Thank you very much.
And just to tell you very briefly about Navjot, Navjot has a PhD in sociology from the Memorial University of Newfoundland. And then she held a postdoc. Navjot, you'll have to specify the name of the institute.
Yeah, it's Polish Academy of Sciences,
Right, in Poland.
Poland.
Right. And Navjot, your research interests include gender, environmental and epistemic justice, changing landscapes, masculinities, and sense of place in the global south. And you're also the author of Hegemonic Masculinity, Caste, and the Body, which was based on your PhD. This was a book based on your PhD thesis, right?
Yes.
So that's what I have in way of a very brief introduction for you. Did you have anything to add to that?
I think you covered it pretty well. So, yeah, so I did my PhD, and I'm a gender studies scholar, a men and masculinity scholar, and Sumit and I have worked on a lot of different projects together, and we are also currently working on very interesting projects, especially on Punjab's environment and storytelling. So,
Yeah.
That's a really interesting topic. Like I'm really excited for you to complete your work and then I get to read it.
oh, have you taken a look at it?
I haven't, but Sumit has told me the gist of it.
Uh-huh.
And also, I've listened to your other conversations. There was one that you had with, sorry, I'm forgetting the name of that YouTube channel. Sumit, can you just?
It's Muksar, your conversation on Muksar Dialogues.
Yeah.
Yes, Muksar Dialogues. So that conversation I heard, and it was very interesting. I'm looking
Thank you.
forward to hearing or reading more about that.
Thank you very much. Yeah, that's a project that's close to heart. And Sumit and I recently started our own series of like podcast on that particular project based on that, the reflections on the interviews that we do in regards to that project. So basically, what we do is we interview people who have like memories of the environment in Punjab that is no longer there. And we try to see what their emotions and sense of place, how their sense of place has changed or is changing. So that's a very interesting project. What we want to achieve with that project is a kind of an archive for future generations and for reference about what Punjab's environment once looked like.
Yeah, that's something really worthwhile because the environment seems to be, and the people who remember that, they seem to be fast disappearing now.
Yeah.
But coming back to our conversation, let's start at the beginning. I'm interested in knowing how you got started with reading in particular.
Okay, so I started reading when I was very young. So my father used to have a little library at house. It wasn't really a library, it was a small cupboard filled with books. So there was like 100 or 120 books or something like that. So they were all in Punjabi literature. So by the time I got to like eighth or ninth grade, I had read almost all of those books. So they were books by authors like Nanak Singh and Jaswant Singh Kamal, Amrita Pritam, Balwant Gargi, and all of those people. So I didn't understand it at that time, of course. So, but I still read them. And one of the one of the forbidden pleasures, not pleasures, I would say, one of the forbidden books that I read was by Sadat Hasan Manto. and that was that had an impact on me, and the kind of the rawness that was in those books. And I that had a very, what can you say? So I knew that I wasn't supposed to read those books, but I still read them. Um, so that was my interaction with my father's library. But I really got into reading English literature when I went to my cousins' houses. So they got like English books as a prize from their school. So one of the first books that I read, I remember, was Wuthering Heights, and I didn't understand it like one bit. So I had no idea what was going on, but I still read it. So that was kind of my first exposure to books in English language. And then my father bought a copy of Mulk Rajanan's Tales Told by an Idiot. So the title seemed very appealing to me. So I thought, Tales Told by an Idiot, what kind of title is that? I should read this book. And it was a collection of short stories by Mulk Rajanand. So there were all kinds of stories. There was like tragic stories, there were comedy stories, and there were like everyday life kind of stories. And the one that stayed with me was this story. I don't remember the title of it now, but it was a story based on the partition. So like back partition as a background. So there was, should I narrate? Should I give the summary of the story a little bit?
Yeah, yeah,
So
please.
there was this, yeah. So there was this woman called Rukmani who had this pet parrot. So she kept that parrot in a cage in front of her house, like in the door or somewhere, and she taught him to speak, to talk. And he would say, so she had a friend, a neighbor, who would come to their house almost daily, and she would cry out from the door asking Rukmani where she is. So she will say it in Punjabi. She will say, ni Rukmani hai, ni tu kithe hai, ni tu ki karni hai. So the parrot would learn those things, right? So the parrot would learn it, and then he would repeat it. And then some things happen, and the riots happen, and everything that went on during the partition, and Rukmani is killed. And the parrot keeps on repeating, Rukmani hai, ni tu kithe hai, ni tu ki karni hai. So that was like a very moving story for me, and that made me actually cry, that story. The reading about the parrot who still repeats, like he's looking for Rukmani where she is, but she's no longer there. So that got me interested into Mulk Raj Anand's works. So I read a couple of his works after that. Um, so yeah, briefly, I mean, then we were talking about how I got interested in reading, and then I would read comic books. So we lived in a very small town, and we didn't have many bookshops or libraries there. So there was this one auntie who would rent comic books by the kilo. So every summer holidays, I would just go with my dad, with my father, and I she charged like 5 rupees a kilo or something like that, and I would get this big bunch of comic books from her, and then I had to return the comic books. So I just went through them. I ate them up. So I also read them with my friend. I remember there was this friend of mine called Minnie Chauhan. I don't know if Minnie Chauhan is listening. So she was there in our town very briefly. So she was, because her father was there for some, he got his, what do we call that? Transfer. He got transferred to our colony, and he was there. She was there for like 6 months or a year or less than that. And we used to read those comic books together. So the way we used to read them was, she would be one character, I would be the other character, and we would read the dialogues of the book, of the comic book. And one thing I remember, I told Sumit earlier, was we didn't know how to read the yelling. So in comic books, when they yell, they put small S, right? Like when they say
Yes, yes,
ah, they will write ah and then small S.
yes, yes.
So we didn't know what that was, and we were hissing all the time. We were like ass. And then after some time, we thought, ah, that cannot be right. And then I think we actually figured out that this was like yelling or crying or like prolonging the word. So that is one thing I remember. And then Minnie actually wanted me to come to her school. So she was in St. Paul's, that was a convent school, and I was in army school. And she gave me her textbooks because she thought that I was going to be like in her school next year. So her textbooks, most of them were like, because it was ICSE board, so most of them were in English. And there were like short stories and the blue jackal and stuff like that. So that was mind blowing to me. I was like, what is this thing? Because I had never read English books before, right? So I had read only Nanak Singh and all those drab books that I didn't understand. And this was a whole new world to me, the books for children in English. So I didn't end up going to her school. I stayed in my school, but that kind of started me on a, you can say, a journey through the English literature. And the authors I read the most are Indian authors. So we can talk about that a little later if you want. So that was
Right.
it. That was.
Yeah, that was a really interesting way of reading comics books.
Mhm.
I've never heard of anyone reading comic books
Yeah.
like that, and I figure it must have been a lot of fun.
Yes, it was.
So I just have a question that you read Nanak Singh and all those serious authors that are meant for adults, Punjabi authors, and also Mulk Raj Anand, again not an author who writes for children. So, and you were quite a child at that time. You were not, you were of a very tender age, I think, 8, 9,
Yeah.
10. So you didn't understand, and then you read Wuthering Heights also at that age, and that is something that even
No.
adults have trouble, reading and understanding. So I want to ask you, uh, how did any of us, like Sumit, this question is actually more for you. Did you also read some books at a very tender age that you didn't quite understand what was going on, but you still read it anyway?
Yeah.
Because I feel that's one of the hallmarks of a reader. वो कहते हैं ना that होनहार बच्चे के होनहार बिरवान के होत चिकने पात, that
चिकने चिकने पाद.
yes, that you can see the
What?
signs.
I
that's
have
a
no
Yeah.
idea
that's a saying in Hindi.
what is this? You both seem to know what Puneet just said. What is it?
It's होनहार बिरवान के होत चिकने पात.
Yeah.
I think I'm saying it right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, I haven't. So that means I haven't studied Hindi like properly. I was in ICSE in Navjot from
Mm.
6th to 10th,
Mm.
and so yeah, I mean, so there's a huge amount of focus on English literature in
Yeah.
ICSE boards, and so from 8th to 10th, there was this. We were studying a lot of literature, like classic literature, but anyway, that's a separate issue, but sorry, a subject. But Puneet, can I answer that question really quickly, and then Navjot, you can talk about how it was for you reading these books that were not meant for children. So the books that I want to talk about that I read as a very young person that I was not supposed to read were, my dear friend, your books, which you were buying, like all those Mills and Boons and all these romantic, erotic sort of like semi-erotic sort of books. And I was like, oh man, what is this? So
I
that's
want to
what I read.
correct you there. I want to correct you. I never bought any Mills and Boons. I only
So who
borrowed
bought?
them.
Oh, you borrowed them. Okay, okay. So there were all these Mills and Boons sitting around, and you told me very categorically that, listen, these are not for you. So please don't. And so, obviously, when you tell a young person, like a young child, that these are not for you, these are not meant for, that's the first thing that you're going to do, right? That like, why is this not for me? And oh man, I would only look for the steamy scenes, like just those pages, and I was like, what is this nonsense story? Oh, let me just flip through this, go to the steamy scenes, read those. And yes, I was like too young to understand the act of the sexual act. So I was like, what are they doing? Like, I didn't really understand, but I got it eventually. I So that was my sex education. So that's that's what I want to talk about in terms of reading stuff that's not meant for you. Yeah.
Okay.
But
Okay,
Navjot,
that's
how
Yeah,
interesting.
that's,
you
I guess that's good education, Mills and Boons. Yeah. So my experience, yeah, in reading Nanak Singh and other Punjabi authors, I guess the thing that appealed to me was I knew what they were writing. I mean, I could identify with the things and places and the stories that they were writing, you know? So they were very relatable because they were writing about the Punjabi culture and context, right? So I remember reading this one short story called Pua by Nanak Singh. And when I read that story, I remember um, so my dad used to have this Masi, so my grandmother's younger sister, and she was very much like the Pua that Nanak Singh describes in the story. So I guess I would find something that I can relate to in the story and then enjoy it. I guess that's how I got through those books, but not all of them
Navjot, if
because
Navjot, if I can just interrupt you for a minute, would you just because Pua is a very interesting story, can you just relate it in short for the listeners what the story is about?
yeah, from what I remember, I guess Pua was a very so there's this guy who goes to his Pua's house, so his auntie's house, and she's a very hospitable woman, and she presents him with all kinds of things, and she's going out of her way to make him feel comfortable, what we call pranachari in Punjabi, right? So she's doing all she can do. She's making dishes like rich dishes and roti and sevia, and then when he's eaten up to like when he's full, and she presents him with the one big glass of milk, and that's how he says that is my pua, that is how my pua is, right? So she loves him so much and she wants to feel him so comfortable in her house and all that stuff, that he is uncomfortable like eating all those things, but he still eats them out of love, right? Out of her love. So that is how my dad's younger Masi was. So whenever we went to her house, she would do that. She was old. And I still remember she would fetch like chairs for us. She was very old and small. And I remember her like she was always, she had a, what do we say, a curved spine, uh, and
Huh?
she would still run and do these things. She would fetch towels for us, and she would fetch chairs for us, and then she would make things for us. So I guess that was a very beautiful and relatable in that kind of way, that I could always find some characters or settings or things that I had seen or I could directly experience also. So I guess that's how I read Nanak Singh. But for Jaswant Singh Kanwal, that was a very different story. So I didn't understand him one bit. I had to reread Jaswant Singh Kanwal when I started to get some idea about how society works and how Punjabi culture works. And then there were some other, like you, Sumit, you said Mills and Boons. Mills and Boons was fun, but Sadat Hasan Manto was not fun. So it was violent, it was raw. But I knew that I am not supposed to be reading this. And if my dad knew that I was reading this book, and that he would be mad at me. So I used to be very careful. I would draw that book out of the cupboard and I would keep it exactly where I found it. So he doesn't know that it's been disturbed, right? And like you, I was very young and I had no idea what was going on, right? So I would go to the parts, you know, I would skip the violence and I would go to the other parts. There were no steamy parts in that, but it was all violence, but I still wanted to understand what was going on. So I guess that was my experience with, that was my first exposure to, you
Mm.
can say, like raw sexuality or this raw kind of violence. And
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
so
Manto, sorry to interrupt, but Manto, I just want to say, I first read Manto when I was just starting out my PhD. So it would have to be, so early 30s. I think I was in my early 30s. And even at that age, Manto was too much for me. And, I was like, oh my God, what, so it takes a while to to sort of deal and with and digest what Manto was writing, how he was like he doesn't gloss over anything. It's like you said, that's the right word. I think it's very raw. Yeah, that's how I felt.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
so
I
was
have not been, sorry.
oh no, just a quick. So did you read Manto in Punjabi or
Yes, in
Urdu?
Punjabi.
Okay.
Yeah, it was in Punjabi. So I remember the book was called
Mm.
Kafan and Other Stories, if I remember correctly. So I haven't been able to read Manto ever since because I know that what kind
Yeah.
of impact will it have on me now. I won't be able to deal with it.
Mm.
So yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, Manto is
So
not
I
for the
feel
faint-hearted.
as a rule, people uh, of authors of Indian origin, like if you see even Mulk Raj Anand's stories, they deal with very serious issues. They deal with caste issues. They deal with impacts of colonialism and stuff like that. So I think since India as a whole was being colonized by the British, and the British were not very kind masters. They milked India of everything that they could, and leaving the people high and dry. And so the environment had a lot of impact on the authors, and authors of that time wrote what the realities of those days were. And I
Yeah.
think partition, I think every Punjabi or every person who has been impacted by partition, it was something very it's not something that can be forgotten. I think it's given us, all of us, and we are younger, we've not seen partition with our own eyes. But do you still feel that you also have that generational trauma passed down to you from your elders? I feel
Yeah,
so.
yes, of course. I think both are your grandparents and my grandparents, they migrated from Pakistan. So your grandfather and my grandmother mother were siblings. So I still remember she used to tell us these stories, and I talk about this also in my research papers or articles and book that I wrote. I specifically write about it in some other context, in the context of masculinity, but that has a very big impact on me. That has had a very big impact on me. And she used to tell us how your grandfather, because he was in the army, he was a subedar at that time, he got them out of Pakistan, right? So it was very violent and riots were going on, and he managed to get his army truck, and he managed to get all his relatives, like brothers and sisters and all of them, into that army truck, and then he transported them over to what was now India. So I have heard that story from her many times. So certainly that had an impact on me as a child also and as an adult, and that has impacted my work. That has impacted how I think, and that has, of course, it's a generational trauma, and I can certainly feel that trauma secondhand. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So I think that is something very real, that kind of trauma. And in fact, I feel that even now, if there are some movies or series that deal with the subject of partition,
Yeah.
I'm not very comfortable
Yeah.
watching those violent scenes and all.
Yeah. True. True. And I'm
But
also
anyway,
not able to see, I don't watch any movies related to partition. I don't watch any movies related to 1984 because
yeah,
that hits close and that is very
yeah,
disturbing.
yeah, it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're right. So anyway, coming back to our topic, there's one very personal question that I want to ask you, something that I have experienced, and I'm eager to know if you've experienced it too. Has anyone ever criticized you over your reading habit? That you're always reading, and this is not something good or something desirable? Because I have been. So I was just curious, or that is it just my experience, or have other people also experienced the same?
I have certainly experienced that because that reading was one of the ways to escape people for me because I didn't like sitting in people and like just doing sitting among children and doing nonsense things, or I don't know, I would not say nonsense. But that was a way for me to escape people, especially when I went to my Nanke, my maternal house, my grandparents, maternal grandparents. So because there everybody would gather, my masis and my mamas and their children, and they would talk about I don't know if I should say this, but there were some people who would, they have this habit of just criticizing a child, like body shaming and stuff like that. You should do that, you should not do that, you should know how to do housework, you should not be eating that much, you should be thin, or stuff like that. And reading was a way for me to escape all that criticism, right? And I was then criticized for reading also, that she doesn't do anything with us, she doesn't play with us, my cousins would complain. So I remember I used to go to my Masi's house, and I used to go straight upstairs to my cousin's room where she had those books that she got as prizes from her school, like where I read Wuthering Heights. So I remember her. So my mom would say, "Why don't you?" My mom would say to my cousins that, "Why don't you also go and invite her to play?" And she would then say, "She doesn't come out. She just wants to stay in the room. She just reads all the time." Ye, wo. And that was also criticism of a kind. So I was escaping them to escape criticism of some other kind, and then they were criticizing me for reading also. So that was kind of a very not a good time for a child. So that also had an impact on me and my mind. And I still say these things to my cousins, that you used to do that to me. And now they laugh on those things. Yeah.
So even I've had people criticizing me for my reading. It's almost the same experience that, oh, she doesn't do anything, she just sits and reads.
Yeah.
And in my case, these were not children who were saying, these were adults. I think
Mm.
in our culture, somehow body shaming and criticizing young child, it's so normal. It's been normalized, like without a thought to what impact you might be having on that child's psyche by saying all these things to the child. So I've been criticized by an uncle of my mother's, like my mother's uncle. I have been criticized by him for reading things, for thinking too much of myself. I was actually reading Rabindranath Tagore, which is again, it was not something that I was reading out of choice. It was just there, and I picked it up. I was reading, trying to understand. Obviously, I was not understanding. I was hardly in like class sixth or seven. I could not understand what is being written, but I was just reading and trying to understand. And there, this guy is standing on my head and saying, "What are you reading?" And he, plucked the book out of my hand. Oh, Rabindranath Tagore, what do you think of yourself? And I felt so ashamed, like I'm doing something wrong. And so after he went, I just put the book back quietly and I was like, okay, I'm not meant to read this. Uh, anyway.
For
So,
me, actually, I'm so,
oh
so
no,
sorry.
no, 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 go ahead, go ahead. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, for me, actually, the first time I felt free to read was when I went to hostel. So I went to hostel to do my bachelor's, and there I would read like crazy. I would just, because we didn't share rooms with anyone, so we had our individual rooms. So I would borrow books from the library and I would just stay in my room and read, and nobody would say anything. So I think that was the one thing that gave me freedom to read. And I remember I read in my first year, I read Gone with the Wind cover to cover. So that was a great experience for me. And after that, I didn't stop. I just read all the books, all the Punjabi books I could find in the library, because our school was the engineering college, so it had a huge library, and they had a huge collection of Punjabi literature also. So I read all kinds of books there,
Hmm.
because there was no fear of criticism.
So that's interesting that the engineering college had literature as well. So, so this criticism of reading, I think, is a there's so much to explore in what the two of you have shared about your experiences. I don't remember being directly criticized, although I think I've experienced some secondhand criticism from which I think my mum shielded me, which Puneet, perhaps you also remember. But so what I remember is some somebody saying, some like a friend of the family, some older person, some auntie or uncle saying something which was not said directly to me, which was said to our mom. And then our mom told us later on that, people have these sort of notions that you guys are reading some nasty stuff. Like you guys are reading things that you shouldn't be reading, essentially. Which is very funny because, of course, I was reading things that I shouldn't be reading, like I said earlier. But those were, I was not actually reading that. That's not, I don't even count it as reading, right? I mean, those were just there was this steamy stuff that I was like, oh, just interested like any other adolescent would be. And so, but the other stuff, like I was reading so much more and such interesting stuff and such great authors, which have shaped me in so many different ways. And I was appalled that people, without sort of understanding or without asking about the kind of things that we were reading, how are they making these assumptions? Like, this is almost like casting aspersions on your character, that, oh, Pen, gee, you must be careful what your children are reading, because there is, for sure, if they are stuck to their books so much, then that means that they're reading something like wrong, in quotes, like erotic stuff. I think that was the connotation. So, yeah, so that's a very long-winded way of saying that there is something wrong with our culture, right? I mean, because people are assuming that reading is a bad thing, whereas in so many other cultures, even within India, reading is considered a good thing. It's considered something that is encouraged among young people. Like, for example, I know the Bengali community, everybody reads. There are a couple of communities in Kerala, like Malayali communities, which read quite a lot. So something going on in specific in Punjab, that people are not, I guess, encouraging reading for some reason.
Yeah,
Although
I
it
think
seems to
those
be
are.
changing. Not sure if, yeah, sorry.
No, no, no. You continue.
No, no, I was just saying, do you have a sense of whether this is changing or
I don't
what's
know
going
about
on?
that. I don't see people holding more people holding books and reading
Mm,
them. I was just going to say that the people who say that if she's reading so much or if he's reading so much, then they are obviously reading the wrong stuff, are the people who don't know that majority of the literature is good literature. So
mm,
they have only read the literature that's bad. I mean, I remember, that reminded me, I remember my older cousins, the boys, they would read nasty novels, so in Punjabi. So I
okay.
remember I found one of their novels, but I looked at the cover and it wasn't good. And then my uncle came and he snatched the book out of my hand and he said, "Girls don't read novels." Because
Mm,
he thought that novels are only, dirty novels. There's no good novels, there's no good books. So I remember that.
So I
yes,
wanted
sir.
to just add my experience here, that novels, if you would say the word novel, most people it would mean the novel, the cheap novels that you would get at the railway station, that
Yeah.
were in Hindi, mostly in Hindi or Punjabi, and they were like these steamy. Yes, that was understood कि ये steamy तो होगा, and some jasusi novels,
Mhm.
jasoos, so and so, and so when you say the word novel, to most people they would picture that kind of a novel.
Mm,
There
Yeah.
was no awareness of other kinds of literature, like novel as a genre, as a form of literature. People just did not know, and
Yeah.
that is the reason that everybody was so opposed to girls reading, that like, why are girls reading
Mm.
novels?
but in our particular socioeconomic circle, like our environment, it's not a universal truth for, like we were just saying, I think you stepped out for a minute, Puneet, but we were just saying that how there are some other communities in which reading is very highly valued. like Bengali community, for example, they have this huge tradition of reading, like everybody reads.
So that
So
is, I don't know how we got to that point, because even Punjabi literature is very rich when you look at all those, the poetry, the Punjabi poetry, Punjabi novels. It is quite rich. It is quite diverse. But I don't know how we as a society got to this point where we think that reading is something not good.
yeah.
That's an interesting question. Getting back to our conversation about books, I want to ask Navjot, what kind of genres did you read and which ones did you enjoy the most?
So, I guess the books that I was interested in most was by Indian authors. So I would read short stories, I would read novels, anything that I could get my hands on. So I particularly liked Mulk Raj Anand, I liked Ruskin Bond, I liked R.K. Narayan. And recently, when I was in Canada, I came across Anita Rao Badami, and that was a very different and very, very good experience reading her. So the books that I remember reading and that have had an impact on me are Mulk Raj Anand's Untouchable and Coolie. And those were beautiful books. And R.K. Narayan's English Teacher and Malgudi, obviously. Every child in India, I think, has read Malgudi. And then The World of Nagraj. So these were the books that I think I liked reading those books. Like I said earlier, that I would read those Punjabi books because I could relate to them. And these were also the kind of work that I could relate to. So Mulk Rajanand and R.K. Narayan, they wrote about like ordinary people, right? So they didn't write anything heroic or extraordinary, right? So they would write about the humdrum of daily life, the thoughts of the ordinary people, what goes on in their mind. So I especially like Nagraj because I think Nagraj is a lot like me. So Nagraj is a big procrastinator. He doesn't do anything, but he thinks about doing lots of things. In his mind, he's a big achiever and he's a big thinker and he's a big, doer, but he does nothing. So as whenever he starts doing something, something comes up, you know. So he sits by so in the invented town of Malgudi, there's this small uh, colony where he lives. So he sits on the payol, the veranda, all day, and he looks at people that are doing their works and that they are passing by, and he looks at them and he thinks, and his wife makes him food and he eats it. Then he goes out for a stroll and he volunteers at a sari shop. He volunteers, he doesn't work. So because he said I can't take money from them, they are my old friends. So he volunteers for them. And then he thinks about writing a book on the life of the Narad Muni. And he gets on with it a bit. He consults an old grumpy priest, and then he gets nowhere. His nephew arrives, and then his life is all like turned upside down. And whenever he starts writing about the life of Narad, something or the other comes up. Either his nephew, or something happens in the gully, or somebody is shouting. He never gets in this headspace to write about it. I really liked. I have this book with me here, but I don't know where the quote is. You said that I can have my favorite quotes at hand. So somewhere he says, I have the pen, I have the ink, I have my chair. All I lack is a sense of calm or something like that to write it. So that was very funny to me. So I think I like reading about characters that I can relate to directly, or like either these characters are me or they are somebody I know. They are living the same life that I live. They are living the same ordinary pedestrian life, like in English teacher also. But sometimes in these stories, they are ordinary stories, but sometimes they are defined by like extraordinary events, like in the English teacher. So I like that very much because it had that element in it. So a life of an ordinary professor gets defined by an extraordinary event of his wife dying, and then her communicating to him after dying. So that was a very beautiful story, very profound. And then I particularly liked Coolie. So Coolie is a story of a small child, small boy from the Kangra Hills. So he's called Munnu. So Munnu is like Untouchable. You must have read Untouchable. So in Untouchable, Mulk Raj Anand talks about caste, right? So how caste discrimination happens in India, in the colonial India. And in Coolie, I guess he talks about more about class, social class. So I have this book with me, and I have bookmarked this particular paragraph that I like. If you want, I can read it. It's a very short paragraph. Good. Okay. So Munnu works at a, so he runs away from his house because his I don't remember, I think his father is cruel to him, so he beats him, so he runs away and then he starts working for somebody else, and now he's at some babu's house. So and he's working for them as a dishwasher in the kitchen, and a doctor comes to visit the babu, and he looks at the doctor and he's very impressed by him because he's wearing a suit and he's handling these medical equipments, he the stethoscope and everything, and he thinks, oh, I wish I could be like him, I wish I could be somebody important. And he then Mulk Raj Anand says the stories of his ancestors, the stories of his village, the stories of his province, his country, which he had read at school and excelled at remembering, had all been records of the desire for power, the desire for property, and the desire for honor of a few chosen men. And like every child in the world, like most grown ups even, he had been blinded by the glamour of greatness, the glory and splendor of it, into forgetting that he was condemned by an iniquitous system always to remain small, abject, and drab. So that was very, it was in the somewhere in the beginning of the book, and it was very tragic to me that how this little child, he doesn't know that he doesn't have these opportunities available to him, or he doesn't know what he has to do, to achieve that status, that he looks up to these people. And that was very tragic, that he will never get these opportunities. He will never get to be the Chota Babu or the Bada Babu or the doctor or whatever that was. And in the end, that boy gets exploited by everybody he meets. So he gets exploited by this woman in this household, and then he runs away from here. Then he starts working at some mill, cotton mill. Then he gets exploited there because he has to work like extra long hours in very bad conditions. And then he leaves that job and runs away from there, and he's and somewhere else. He encounters like one or two nice people, but those nice people have their own tragedies, so they are no longer able to support him or no longer able to employ him. Then he has to go somewhere else. Then he starts working as a coolie, and in the end he dies a terrible death because he contracts tuberculosis. So he dies of tuberculosis. So the reading about coolie, reading about Munnu was an experience in itself. So you like this book takes you on a journey through a boy's life, this boy's life who doesn't have the opportunities available to him, who's born in a very poor family in colonial India, and how things happen to him, how he gets exploited and then dies. So this was very tragic, but a very beautifully written book. So I would certainly recommend it if you have not read it. And should I talk more about the books that I'm reading or I like? So, like I said, I like Malgudi. So I have always have a copy of Malgudi with me. So I guess as a child, I wanted to go to Malgudi. Whenever I read this, I would, because Swami was my favorite, So Swami was me. Swami was the children I played with. So we were doing all kinds of things that he was doing. So I was sleeping with my grandmother. She used to tell me stories that Swami's grandmother also used to tell him stories, and he would play out with his friends and he would talk. He would say these things to them, and he would talk in a manner that was very familiar, that every child in India talks like, right? So that was a very relatable thing for me. And nowadays, I am very interested in reading this Tales from Moomin Valley. So it's written for children, but it's such a beautiful book. And it's also not just one book, it's a series of books. And I mean, it's very unlikely that you find a resemblance in such different contexts and settings. So Tov Jensen and R.K. Narayan have so much in common. So, so Malgudi is an invented place, and Moomin Valley is also an invented place. So, like Malgudi, so Moomin Valley is a very idyllic place where these children live with their parents and they play with the children from the neighborhood and stuff like that, and then they go on adventures. So the difference is that Malgudi, the characters are human beings, but in Moomin Valley, the characters are not only animals, but I think imaginary animals. They are not real animals. Um, and they bear some resemblance to real animals. The protagonist, the Moomin troll and Moomin maiden, they look like rhinoceros, and their friend, he looks like a kangaroo, and there are one or two human characters, but the parallels between them are like, if they are stark, they are really good. So I think I can say that Swami and Moomin, Swami and Moomin are very similar in so many aspects. So Swami is a child, Moomin is a child, and they have their childhood, good childhood. They are living their good childhood. They are living in their house. They are dependent on their parents. They know that their parents are going to be there at the end of the day, whatever they do, right? So they go out on adventures, their own adventures, and they come back home, and their mother is there cooking food, and their father is there, and everything. So I think it's beautiful in that respect. So these are some of the things that some of the books that I'm very fond of. And other than that, I said I don't have copies of those books with me right now. I've read Anita Rao Badami's two books. So one is called the Can You Hear the Nightbird Call, and the other one is called the Tamarind Mane. So, so I guess I stumbled upon Anita Rao Badami was when I was in Canada. So she's an Indian Canadian author, and she writes about Canadian Indians, right? So in the first book, Can You Hear the Nightbird Call? She talks about Sikhs and Hindus living in Canada in the 1980s, I guess, late 1980s and 90s. And then she talks about 1984 and the Kanishka, the airplane
There in India.
blast. Yeah. So so that was also a very relatable, you know, thing that I knew about this history, and I knew about these people. I was these people. So I am these people. So I guess I enjoyed reading that. And then Tamarind Mame, um, so it is about these people who lives in colonies. So we lived in colonies, and they lived in railway colonies. And she talks about, it's very beautiful book in respect that it's about a mother and a daughter. So it's about how a daughter remembers her mother when she was growing up, when the daughter was growing up. And then she gives the pen, I guess, to the mother, and she writes it from her point of view. And it's so interesting to read how the two points of view are so different, like how the mother used to view her, how the daughter used to view her mother as a child, and how the mother used to feel at that time, you know. So tamarind meme is like the Imli meme. So she was very sour. She was a sour woman. And the girl remembers her being sour all the time and, scolding the servants and stuff like that. And she remembers her father being the very workaholic kind of guy who came late from work and a very calm kind of guy. But the mother remembers it differently. You know, her mother remembers the father as someone who's not interested in the house in her, right? And that's why she was sour all the time. So I think that was a very different kind of work to read, and it was very interesting as well. Yeah.
Does the title say Tamarind Mame and Mame as in Mame Sahib?
Yeah, yeah,
That kind of
MEM.
meme. Okay, right.
Yeah.
Can I just go back a little bit? I wanted to explore that connection that you made between Tove Jansson and R.K. Narayan. So correct me if I'm wrong, but Tove Jansson is Swedish.
Yes.
right? And so that idyllic place that she has created, it's a woman, right? Tove Jansson, a
Yes.
woman, right? So that she has created that idyllic Swedish village, and then Arkin Narayan obviously has created this idyllic South Indian village. Um, and so Arkin Narayan was writing in colonial India, and I think he continue to write after independence also, maybe perhaps, not sure. But
Yeah.
like early 1900s to maybe mid 1950s or something like that.
Yeah.
And what time period is, do you know, Tove Jansson writing in?
I think it's also from the 1980s. Oh no, it's from 1914. No,
Okay,
no, 1945, sorry.
okay.
Yeah.
So there's perhaps a little bit of an overlap in terms of time
Mm.
period, but the socio-economic circumstances of the two authors are very different.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
that's very interesting that you're saying that, that you could see really stark parallels between the two. So I guess it's for me, it's a commentary on how similar the human condition is
Yeah.
in spite of all these cultural differences, or differences in time periods or economic conditions. So not a question, just a thought there.
I think that's also and I didn't think about it that much when I was reading it, but then I started looking at also I was just revisiting some of the books by R.K. Narayan, and when I started reading Malgudi again, and then I said, oh, it's very similar to Moomin Valley. So I guess Moomin Valley has nothing to do with it has no context at all, it has no society around it. It is just a bunch of animals and there's no socioeconomic conditions, there no caste, there's no religion, there's nothing. But in Malgudi, of course, there was all these things because it was very realistic.
Mhm.
So I guess it kind of differs in that aspect. But other than that, I think the main idea behind these two, to create an idealistic town or that all humans would love to live in, it kind of appeals to you at a very basic level that every child should have a very good childhood with their parents and with their friends, and in terms of whatever they do, they go on their little adventures and stuff like that. So I think that is very beautiful.
Hmm. Right. Yeah. Puneet, did you have a question?
So can I ask you, like, from because you enjoy Moomin Valley a lot, so do you in general enjoy the fantasy genre? Have you Do you enjoy that genre? Have you read any books, other books, fantasy literature?
Yeah, other than Moomin Valley, I've read comic books. So comic books are also like fantastical in nature. So I used to read Nagraj and Super Commando Dhruv and
Yeah.
Gamraj and Yamunda. They were very funny. I couldn't find them anywhere now, but I remember them being very funny. And then I would read Banke Lal. Banke Lal was so funny.
When you were talking about Nagraj, Tales of Nagraj, I thought you were talking about that Nagraj, that
Ah,
person in a green suit. He used to shoot snakes
yeah,
out
yeah,
of
yeah.
his arms or something.
Yeah, yeah. Comic books I used to read Nagraj, that one with the snake suit. The other one is the by R.K. Narayan. And in terms of comic books, I would read all kinds of it. I would read Billu, Pinky, Chacha Chaudhary, Nagraj, Dhruv, and all of the comic books that were there in the 90s. So I've read all of them. So I guess I do enjoy this fantasy genre a lot. And I also remember at one point I read Goosebumps. So it was also a series. I don't remember the author, but those I also enjoy.
I think R.L. Stein or
Yes, yes,
something.
yes. R.L. Stein.
I
Yes.
Because I have
understand.
read so many Goosebumps.
Yeah.
Enjoyed Goosebumps.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sumit, I don't think you've ever heard of or read
No,
Goosebumps.
I've certainly heard of Goosebumps, and I have read just the one Goosebump when I was reading to your son, to my nephew.
Hmm.
He was very little and he was very fond of Goosebumps, and I was like, can you read this to me? I said, all right. But I did not enjoy it, I have to say.
No,
Yeah.
yeah, no, not as an adult. It's not, you
Yeah,
would
as an
not enjoy
adult,
it.
yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And I also remember this when one very fantastic book called The Little Prince.
Hmm.
So that book I read when I was about what 20 years old or something. So a long time ago. But that book certainly had an impact on me on the way I my thought process worked. So if you read that book, that would certainly have that kind of an impact on you. So it's a very small, thin book by Saint Exupéry. He wrote it in the 1800s, I guess. And it's also fantasy, and but it's a beautiful book. Beautiful.
Considered a classic,
Mm,
one of I think in that, that list of top 100 books to read before we
mm-hmm.
die, things like
Also,
that.
yeah.
Yeah, it's a piece of philosophy disguised as a
Mm.
children's book, and I borrowed it from you actually.
Oh, yes,
Yeah,
I remember.
so
Yeah.
I enjoyed reading it. Yeah, Puneet,
Mm-hmm.
have you read it?
No, sadly, I haven't
Yeah,
read it. So I think
yeah,
I'll put it on my list. Yeah.
strongly recommend
Mm,
that you read it. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. Can I? So I guess the next question that I have is that there were a lot of children during that time period when you were reading these comic books that you described, Nagraj and Dhruv. Like I think almost everyone read them. I've read them. I thought Nagraj was so cool, very handsome. I thought.
Yes.
So
All muscular.
yeah, yeah, it's like muscles popping out, and his superpower was very cool too. The power to summon snakes, and did he also have, like, could he also bite and he had venom or
I
something?
guess
Was
so.
it?
Yeah. He must if he
No,
was
he
Nagraj.
had he had snakes living in his body.
Oh, he could also swing, like he would make a
Yeah,
snake
yeah.
rope
Rope.
and
Yeah.
then he would swing.
Yeah.
So it's
Spider-Man.
like Spider-Man combined with the maybe Tarzan, the ability to summon snakes,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
so
Maybe Spider-Man was inspired by
in
Nagraj.
yeah, who knows? Yeah. So I guess the question is, so a lot of children were reading Nagraj and Dhruv and all that, but they didn't then make the transition to reading other books, to move on to serious literature. What do you think was different in your experience as
Mm.
compared to that of other children?
Yeah. I can't say for sure, but I guess I had this in me from the beginning, like I said earlier, that I would just read no matter what. So I don't think I made the transition from comic books to other books. I think I made transition from other books to comic books. It was the other way around for me, and then from comic books to other books. I still read comic books, but I guess I don't know I don't know for sure that what I guess my dad was a big reader, so he still reads books and he still enjoys reading, and he enjoys writing also, like he writes these little anecdotes from his childhood. So I guess I had it in me. It's also partly because of him that he maybe inculcated the habit of reading in me from a very young age. And I was never criticized for reading in my own house. So that was a very good thing. I had the freedom to read anytime, all the time. So I guess that was it.
Hmm. Okay. Well, that's very interesting. Yeah.
I think
So
this
would
is
you?
a very sorry, go
No, no,
ahead.
no. Go ahead. Go ahead. Go ahead.
No, no, I was just making an observation that this is something very important. If one of your parents is a reader and a child is surrounded by books, and he sees his parents reading, being around books, that uh, contributes a lot towards inculcating the reading habit in a child. That would nobody would need to push the child or push a book into his hands. Oh, you should read. That doesn't work. But
Yeah.
if there is a library at home and there are no other distractions, and the child sees the parent reading regularly, then I think that child would naturally grow up to become a reader.
That's true. That's true. And there were no distractions when we were growing up. We didn't have phones. We didn't have internet. We didn't have the cable even. Cable came in the 2000s when we were grown up.
One question that I wanted to ask, which actually I struggle with, talking about distractions, because Navjot, I've talked to you about this, that, I'm making a concentrated effort to stay away from social media because it's so distracting. It plays on your mind. And there is now mounting evidence from neurological research, from psychological research, that it is bad for your brain, right? Um, and I mean, it's so easy to tell. The days when you start your day with like looking at a bunch of reels on YouTube or whatever other social media sites there are, you can, those things play on your mind and it affects your concentration and your ability to do good work. And on the days that you can switch off and you can stay away from that stuff, you can see that it that your focus is better and you can concentrate better. So I've been trying this, to stay away from all of this stuff. And I find that definitely it helps me to read more because I was concerned that I wasn't doing enough reading. So, and I know that you read quite a bit. So do you want to talk a little bit about how how you sort of manage distractions? How do you make time for reading? Are there any habits or rituals that you have?
Yeah, yeah. So we have started a new thing. So it's from the past couple of months. So we don't use phone at least 2 hours before bed. So we go to bed around 10 and we switch off our phones or we put them on do not disturb at around 8. And then around 9 we go to bed and I have a bunch of books by my bedside and we both read it, me and my husband. So he will read it, I will listen, or I will read and he will listen. So I think that has helped a lot. It has improved our quality of sleep. It has, it has improved our mental health. So I used to get these nightmares. So I think I told you that we used to watch TV a lot. So especially on weekends, we used to watch Netflix like crazy. We were going through Vikings episode, like 10 episodes a day. And then I started to get nightmares about Vikings. So Vikings were in my dreams and my sleep got disturbed. And then we decided that we shouldn't watch TV or phone right before or 2 hours before we go to bed and at least an hour after we wake up. So I think that has helped a lot. And reading books is certainly because I have some religious books also. I have like the Sakhis, the Janam Sakhis of Guru Nanak Dev Ji and stuff like that. And we read those before we go to bed. And they help us calm down. Like they help us, keep grounded also. So that is a good practice for us.
No, that's great because yeah, that 2 hour switching off 2 hours before bedtime, that's like the standard medical recommendation now to
Mm,
get good sleep. So that's very good. I am so my new ritual is I don't carry my phone into the bedroom.
that's
So
good.
like the bedroom is a no phone zone. For
Yeah.
me, I'm
Yeah.
trying to convince my partner to do it. And he is trying. He hasn't been very consistent with it, but I'm
Mm,
hoping that we'll get there, both of us.
mm. Yeah.
And but yeah, but that that's great that like you and your partner are both doing this together
Hmm.
because I think that that helps quite a lot.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's only the way it works. If you if you're doing to trying to do it alone, it won't work for a long time. But if you're both doing it, then it will become a habit or a ritual.
Mm.
Yeah.
Puneet, you read quite a bit too. Do you have any reading habits or rituals?
Look, you both are working. I'm not currently working in a formal environment right now. So I have a lot of time to read. I read, and I must confess, I watch a lot of reels also.
No, yeah.
I don't have bedtime rituals like you do, but I listening to both of you, I feel quite inspired. Hopefully, I'll get there. Hopefully.
I would say like it definitely has an impact on the quality of your sleep, like
Yes,
Navjot was saying. It's
yes,
noticeable. You can
yeah,
see it. Yeah.
yeah.
So unless we have more questions, I think it's a wrap.
I just want to ask Navjot one last question. How do you decide what you're going to read next? How do you,
Mm.
choose your next book?
Mm. So I guess I used to do it by author name. I used to do that. So, but I think then I came across some authors that weren't familiar to me, but they had done such good work. So, for example, there's this author called Alice Sebold. I don't know if you heard about her. So she's written this lovely book called The Lovely Bones. So I read that book because I used to live in Poland for I lived in Poland for 2 years, and there was no English bookstores. So I found one English bookstore that sold secondhand books, and they didn't have my go-to authors. No, certainly no Indian authors, and no Charles Dickens or the fallback authors. And they had these authors like Alice Sebold, because I think they got their secondhand books from the US that people read here, the New York Times bestsellers and stuff like that, the stuff that we usually don't like. But I bought this book and I really liked it. And after that, I made a rule not to judge a book by its cover. So I guess I don't decide now the book by its author. So I go through the book, and if I think that I will like it, then I read it. And at a time I have like four books open. I cannot just keep one book. So I have right now I'm reading The Travels of Ibn Battuta, and I'm reading this book called Anil's Ghost, which is based in Sri Lanka, and I'm reading Anita Desai. So I just keep these books open all the time. So whenever I feel like it, or whenever, whatever my mood is like, I will read like 1, 2 pages from one of these books. So I guess I don't have a rule now on how I decide which book I will read next. So certainly not, I will not read the book that is number one bestseller. That is number one New York New York Times bestseller. I won't read those books. I haven't read Harry Potter for the same reason. Yeah.
Although on
But
that, I will say give it a shot. I think Puneet might have more to say about that.
Yes, actually, I was when we were talking about the fantasy genre, I was just on the verge of asking you, have you read Harry Potter?
yeah, I
Because
started.
I can not recommend it enough. I loved, loved,
Mm,
loved reading Harry Potter.
yeah, I know people seem to love it a lot, and the more people recommend it to me, the more I say that I am not going to read it. But I will try certainly.
Yeah, give it a shot. Like, I
Like
guess
maybe
because
read
we,
just the first book and see
Mm,
how you like it. That book is not very thick.
mm,
It's a small book.
mhm.
it's a small book. Give it
Yeah,
some time because you just got this recommendation. So
yeah,
give it
yeah.
six months and then maybe you can pick it up.
Yeah, that's the same reason I didn't read The Hobbit or The Lord of the Rings. Because people were liking it so much and people were loving it and they were going crazy and making movies, and I didn't read that. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Okay. I think, Puneet, is that a wrap?
I think so, unless you have some questions for.
No, I'm good. I thoroughly enjoyed this
Yes,
conversation.
I would like to do one thing before we wrap up. Okay, Navjot, give us your recommendation of top five books that you have
Mm.
read.
Mm. Yeah, certainly the first book I would recommend strongly is Tales from Moomin Valley, because I'm enjoying it a lot, a lot. So it's a fantasy genre, and it's very, very touching and very moving. It's very close to my heart, at least. And then I would recommend The English Teacher by R.K. Narayan. It's a very beautiful story. And then I would recommend Diamond Dust by Anita Desai. So it's like a collection of short stories, but beautifully written. And I would recommend The Tamarind Mame by Anita Rao Badami, and also Kuli by Mulk Rajanand, obviously. Oh, how many were there? Five or six? Uh-huh.
Six, I think, but solid list. Thank
Mhm.
you.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that was a great conversation. Thank you so much for making time.
Thank you so
And
much for inviting me. This was fun. I
Yeah,
thoroughly enjoyed it.
a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Thank you.